It is difficult to stand by and watch a species face extinction. Increasingly, zoos are playing a role in conserving endangered species. And Maria Franke, curator of mammals at the Toronto Zoo, joins us now with more on this. Welcome.
Thank you.
What does a curator of mammals do, anyway?
I oversee the mammal collection. So that's everything from conservation breeding programs to bringing new species in, managing species.
You've got, breeding in captivity going on at the zoo, obviously, and recovery programs. And I'm thinking of a couple here, BlackFooted Ferrets.
Correct.
BFF, as
Yes.
the kids would say.
Yes.
Vancouver Island Marmot. There are programs dealing with these things. What do you got going right now on that?
The BlackFooted Ferret and Vancouver Island Marmot programs are programs that we've been involved for many years, and the sole purpose is to breed animals for reintroduction back into the wild. The importance of zoos, it's like the 911 strategy, where there's a crisis. The Vancouver Island Marmot, the population was down as low as 30 individual animals, and there was no chance of saving them without bringing animals into human care and starting conservation breeding programs to boost numbers and then reintroduce back into the wild.
What are we looking at now?
That's actually BlackFooted Ferret. It's not BlackFooted Ferret, again, thought to be extinct in the wild. And then a small population was found in Meeteetse, Wyoming. And canine distemper hit that last remaining population, so 18 animals, again, were taken out of the wild.
What's canine distemper?
A disease that's transferred through domestic dogs and cats to wildlife. Okay. So the last 18 animals were brought into captivity, and a conservation breeding process was established, and so now animals are being reintroduced back into the wild.
So you've been successful?
Yes, we have been successful.
Why do you think?
I think it's all through partnership and collaboration. I think it's our husbandry standards and care and knowledge base, nutrition, assisted reproductive technologies, good veterinary care, and understanding and working with field biologists, stakeholders, communities, all banding together to save species.
I presume you get attached to them when they're in your care. Is it hard then to send them off into the wilds knowing that their chances of survival, are going to be jeopardized?
Absolutely. All of our staff are professionals, and they know that this is our end goal, conservation. So as much as it can be difficult, there's still this joy and this passion of knowing that we're doing the right thing. We spearheaded the first Canadian reintroduction of black-footed ferrets in Grasslands National Park back in 2009, and I was there releasing ferrets with the primary keeper Paula Roberts, and it was one of the most amazing, emotional, joyful days of our careers, where we knew that we had actually reproduced a number of kits, and we were now releasing them onto Canadian soil to be black-footed ferrets in the wild. It's just an amazing, amazing experience. As I talk about it, the hair goes up in the back of my neck.
Amazing, but emotional.
Very emotional, but in a good way.
In a good way. What's your mandate of the zoo?
Our mandate is conservation, education, and research.
And how do you sort of distinguish between all of those three things? That's a lot, it's a lot on your plate.
It is a lot, but a lot of it's all just joined at the hip. Obviously, Toronto Zoo is set up geographically, so we would like people to come and just walk into the Africa rainforest and know that all the plants and animals are from that geographic region, and demonstrate biodiversity on this planet, because it's amazing. So we have fishes, we have reptiles, birds, mammals, and I think that's really important. And educating the people. It's, a lot of people have said, well, how do you evaluate education? And historically, zoos haven't been that great at it. So now we're trying to get a grasp of that and evaluate it, and we're seeing that we're making positive impact with our visitors. But I really, really don't think that you can evaluate that emotional, spiritual take of our visitors, where you actually see and hear and smell an animal. I think it's just really, really vital. There's this nature deficiency disorder. People are becoming so more removed from nature.
We're very urban these days, aren't we?
Very urban. And so the Toronto Zoo, being a large urban zoo, is allowing people to come and see that biodiversity and get that emotional attachment.
Do you wonder, though, when the kids come through, how much education's really going on? Because there's such a, you see it in their faces. There's such a gee whiz factor when you see all these animals, are they able to really retain information beyond just the wonder of seeing it all?
But in the end, isn't that what's important? This awe, this wonder. That's what's going to take them, go home with them, to then later on want to read up more and find out what they can do to save a species and help climate change and recycle and tell their parents to not idle the car. Like that's the connection.
You plant the seeds at the zoo.
Yes.
And it sprouts from there.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we know that there are certain species that people are particularly, for whatever reason, connected to.
Yes.
They love the pandas, right? Whenever the pandas
Yes,
come over
for
from
sure.
China, they love the pandas. Do you have any mixed feelings about the species you have, the species you care for, the species you spend time on, the species you try to save, and the motives behind which ones you pick and which ones you don't? Because there is, we got to face it, at the end of the day, the zoo's got a budget, you got to balance your budget, you got to get people through the front doors. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, in that I think, funny enough, there's critically endangered species, there's endangered species, there's vulnerable threatened species. But at the rate of mass extinction that's occurring today, I believe almost every species is going to be facing that. Unless you're a raccoon who can adapt to the urban world, a species like a raccoon that can adapt to an urban world. So I think our focus is, with a lot of species, is just being proactive in maintaining genetically healthy populations, where then the more critically endangered species, we put more effort into conservation breeding and reintroductions. We also have head starting programs for turtles, and Atlantic salmon, where we'll actually get eggs from the wild that are in a urban area that would be destroyed anyway. We raise the baby turtles for 2 years and then release them back into established wetlands. So we were giving them a head start.
Do you ever wonder, though, we're getting rid of these turtles, these people love to come see the turtles, maybe not as many people are going to come to the zoo because the turtles aren't here anymore. You ever face those dilemmas?
No.
You don't worry about that?
No.
Well,
I think we have enough species showing biodiversity, and our focus is conservation.
So let me give you another example. How many years ago was it that you had the whole foofara about the elephants?
Yes, that was a difficult time at the zoo.
Okay, because you had elephants, and then, elephants are expensive, and it was hard to keep them, and eventually then you had to send them to California, right?
Yeah, so that was a tough decision to make, but it was a decision made with research. We went into a planning process to see what it would cost to keep elephants long term, and we made the zoo board made the decision that the elephant should be moved out of the collection, because we really actually wanted to have more of a focus on Canadian species in our own backyard.
So no plans to get elephants back?
So there's no plans to get elephants back. They've moved on, and we're now, our new strategic plan is Canadian species, and Vancouver Island Marmot, BlackFooted Ferret, Loggerhead Shrike, Conner Blue Butterfly, and I think that's it was the right decision to make.
And again, dealing with ethical choices, which is what you do every day of your life, how do you reconcile sort of keeping large animals at the zoo, which, I mean, I guess of course you're taking care of them, but in their heart of hearts, they probably belong in the wild. And how do you juggle those two competing interests? The polar bears, for example. We got a polar bear on the wall back here. There's an example.
Yes. So it is difficult in the sense that humans tend to be so anthropomorphic. And of course, would I not like to see zoos? If I thought that the world did not need zoos, and we could just have animals living freely in the wild, of course that would be an ideal choice, but that's not the case. And so without zoos and without these ambassadors for the species, so to speak, the amount of research we do with our animals that directly affects saving the species in the wild is unbelievable. So reproductive technologies, we're doing nutrition studies for polar bears, actually, working with field biologists, looking at energetics to see how climate change and the loss of them being able to hunt their primary food source, seals on the sea ice, how that's going to affect wild polar bears. It's all for the good of the species.
Technology is disrupting almost everything these days.
Yes.
How is it disrupting your life at the zoo?
I don't think there is actually a negative distraction.
Well, let me give a corollary here. Maybe fewer people are going to go to the Art Gallery of Ontario because they can see the art in spectacular fashion on their laptop computers and get a virtual tour and all that kind of stuff. Now, it's not quite the same with the zoo, obviously. You've got living beings instead. But is there some of that happening in your life?
I think if you're comparing to the Art Gallery of Ontario or the Royal Ontario Museum, where there's static displays, I think they're going to be more impacted in the sense that, as you mentioned, we have living, breathing creatures that you can actually see and smell and hear. Where could an urban child go for a stroll and hear lions roaring in the background? I think that there's a demand, definitely. There's a lot of demand through Facebook and Twitter, but I think they're positive demands. They want to know how the giant panda cubs are doing. They want updates. I don't think it's going to have an immediate long-term effect. I hope.
Uber can't do what the zoo does, right?
No, Uber can't.
How long have you been at the zoo?
Oh, gosh, I've been at the zoo for 27 years.
27 years. And in this field, generally speaking, even longer than that, maybe?
Yes.
Okay, so over that more than quarter of a century, what are the biggest changes you've seen in how zoos do their thing?
There's been a massive change. Historically, zoos were a menagerie, come to see the cool animals in smaller enclosures, and now the modern zoo has evolved incredibly. And the amount of conservation, research, and education, I keep repeating myself, but really all of that work that we're doing, a lot of people aren't aware of. Maybe that's our fault. We need to get the message out there. But all of this work we're doing behind the scenes, the Vancouver Island Marmot breeding facility is not even on public view at the zoo. There's no public viewing and no look at this because the animals are so precious and critical for the recovery and reintroduction of these species back into the wild. So there's just such a big change, and there's passion, and there's a need. If we can't save species, I don't know who can. And we can't just sit back and watch this mass extinction happen.
Okay, but having said that, it feels like, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like every few years there is a budgetary existential crisis at the Toronto Zoo. And I wonder just how you, like, what are your hopes for trying to get it onto a more sustainable financial footing? Because it does seem like this happens all the time, right?
Yeah, there's a demand. The zoo is no different than any other business. Sorry, the zoo is no different than any other business. We are a not-for-profit, so any extra money we make goes toward our mandate, conservation, education, and research. And it's getting harder and harder for any attraction to keep themselves going. And so it's a fine balance and a juggle.
Any fears the zoo won't be here in 10 years?
You know, I don't have a fear that zoos won't be here. I really don't. I think we're going to be continuing to be. There's over 700 million people that visit zoos through the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and a year, and that's a lot of voice and a lot of attraction and a lot of attention. And through all of the WAZA accredited zoos, we generate $350 million US dollars a year to conservation. That makes us the third major contributor to conservation and species preservation next to Nature Conservancy and the World Wildlife Fund. So I believe that I see the zoo in this crisis that we're facing with climate change and mass extinction, that the zoos are only going to get more important, and they're going to evolve more and continue to do more of the work that we're doing behind the scenes. And I think we just need to get that message out, and I believe that once the community understands what work we're doing, they'll join hands with us and assist us along the way of saving this incredible world and the biodiversity.
Understood. Maria, thanks for visiting us at TVO tonight.
Thank you.
Maria Franke, curator of mammals, responsible for the mammal population at the Toronto Zoo.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.